Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a very wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, of course, I thought that I would give my little fight breakdown and my little fight review of the very great performance, not great fight, but great performance from Mr. Dmitry Bivol, who, of course, still remains as the WBA super light heavyweight champion of the world after a very, very dominant performance, of course, over the very decently talented and pretty big fighter for a light heavyweight fighter in Gilberto Ramirez. Now, this fight pretty much went down as I predicted. Like I said within my fight prediction video, I had predicted Dmitry Bivol to win by unanimous decision. I said that I would have not been surprised had it been a split decision or maybe a majority decision, something like that. I was expecting this fight to be probably a tad bit closer, but I think that for my final prediction, I ended up predicting Dmitry Bivol to win around 8 rounds to 4, which is around what the fight probably was. In my opinion, it probably was even a little bit further apart. I think I had Dmitry Bivol winning this fight about 9 rounds to 3. And to be honest with you, I think there was even one or two judges that scored it 10 rounds to 2, and you could have easily scored it. That's how dominant of a performance, in my opinion, it was for Mr. Dmitry Bivol. And just like I've been saying overall, especially over the past years, about Dmitry Bivol, he's always been a very dominant fighter. He's always been a very great fighter, which I've been telling people overall for a very long time now. But overall, I thought that the performance by Dmitry Bivol was absolutely outstanding. I think that if he would have even put on the pace a little bit more within this fight, although Dmitry, he doesn't seem to be a guy that throws constantly, but he throws when he needs to. And I told people this. I had a person, I believe, within my comment section yesterday talking about the video that I released when I was talking about David Benavidez and Caleb Plant. And someone said, well, in my opinion, Dmitry Bivol, he's not more powerful than someone like that of a David Benavidez because he did not knock out a certain amount of opponents for years, right? But you can't always just take a look at an opponent just because they have not had a knockout streak or something like that as if they don't have a lot of power, because sometimes it depends on the type of style that they have. And every time that Dmitry Bivol ended up landing on Gilberto Ramirez, it hurt him. Sometimes it stumbled him, or sometimes it put him back. And Dmitry Bivol, once again, he did everything in his power to win this fight, and he did everything that I said that he would need to do in order to win this fight. He used his foot speed advantage, he used his footwork advantage to move in and outside of the range, but he also gained Gilberto Ramirez's respect very early on by pushing him back and landing certain flurries and hurting him with pretty much every major shot that he ended up landing. And when you also take this into context, it's actually quite phenomenal that Canelo Alvarez, especially with how gassed that he was in that fight, it's pretty phenomenal that Canelo Alvarez actually was even able to survive within that fight, considering that Canelo was pretty much a natural middleweight. But, we'll talk about Canelo Alvarez here in a bit after I get done with Gilberto Ramirez and the analyzation. But Dmitry Bivol, in my opinion, he did absolutely everything that he needed to do. He used his jab to blind Gilberto Ramirez and set up traps. He moved this superior foot speed advantage and a superior footwork advantage to the best of his ability to move in and out. I said that he would need to do that. And I also stated that he would also benefit if he tried to push back Gilberto Ramirez and try to hit him with that right hand, which he was able to do a multitude of times. And on top of that, he was able to push him back and gain his respect early. If I would have laid out a game plan for what Dmitry Bivol should have done, it pretty much was what I said in my video, and he pretty much did it beautifully. He did everything that I said that he would need to do to an absolute T. He used his foot speed advantage. He used his jab, his lead hand to set up traps and to move in and out very, very efficiently. His hands were up the whole entire time. He is a very defensively responsible fighter. The speed and the power is still there, and he has very high boxing IQ. As for Gilberto Ramirez, in my opinion, what was the reason why he ended up losing this fight? I just don't think that he has the same capabilities as what a Dmitry Bivol has. Now, he has very decent size, and to be quite honest with you, and I even said this heading into the fight when it came to my fight prediction and my fight preview, Gilberto Ramirez is so damn big that, to be quite honest with you, he probably could be a natural cruiserweight. And there was even conversations, I believe, after the fight asking Gilberto Ramirez himself, are you going to move up in weight after this fight because you've talked about it? So it's very clear that Zerto, that he probably could fit at cruiserweight. But Dmitry Bivol, who probably is not as big or as thick in stature as what Artur Beterbiev is, but still probably a decent light heavyweight, probably around the same size overall as what a David Benavidez is, somewhere around there. So just making it a light heavyweight when it comes down to it. Dmitry Bivol was able to completely outperform Gilberto Ramirez. The fight was really not particularly close. I thought that there were certain rounds, maybe about 2, 3 rounds at most, to where Gilberto Ramirez, he was a bit busier. And that's one thing that I think that Gilberto Ramirez should have done. He should have been willing to trade with Dmitry Bivol a little bit more. And he usually is willing to trade with a certain amount of opponents even more. But like I've been saying about Dmitry Bivol, that man has a great power. And a certain amount of people didn't believe me when I said it. It's very obvious that he has a great power. And everyone who has sparred with him has said the same thing about him. He's very quick. And on top of that, he counters very well. And he has almost Gennady Golovkin type of power, or he hits overall that hard. And we all know that Gennady Golovkin, that dude, when it comes to Gennady Golovkin, that he is a generational type of puncher. He's a once in a lifetime puncher. And I think that Dmitry Bivol, at least for the light heavyweight division, no, he's not always going to get the most amount of knockouts because that's just not his style. Dmitry Bivol isn't a guy that is going to pressure you the whole entire time and try to break you down. Not saying that he won't do that, but what Dmitry Bivol mainly likes to do is that he likes to be on his feet and he likes to move in and out using angles and also overall, using certain counter punching abilities to set you up for traps while moving in and out. So basically, he's going to try to kill you to death with his good 1-2 punch combinations, with his good jab and his good right cross. Throw certain combinations that may be within 3, 4, maybe even sometimes 5 punch combos. That's what Dmitry Bivol is the best at. He's not usually a person that's going to go forward and try to break you down, someone like a Canelo or an Artubitabev. He can do that, but that's not mainly his specialty. That's not mainly what he likes to do. So that's the reason why you'll never see Dmitry Bivol have like a 90% knockout ratio. Even though, to be honest with you, if he probably wanted to, he probably could have stopped Gilberto Ramirez if he would have went a little bit more on the gas. Or who knows, maybe Dmitry Bivol, there was some rounds to where I thought that he kind of laid up against the ropes a little bit too much. So maybe, the size was going to be a little bit tricky for Gilberto Ramirez or for Dmitry Bivol because Gilberto is very lengthy and he's very big, even for the light heavyweight division. So maybe Dmitry Bivol said, I probably could go for the stoppage, but just in case this dude, Mr. Ramirez, just in case he ends up getting a second wind, I don't want to tire myself out. And overall, I don't want to possibly risk getting knocked down or stopped or outworked within the fight, within the final rounds. So I think that what Dmitry Bivol did, in my opinion, I think that it was pretty much a perfect performance, in my opinion. I would give it an A to an A plus. I think that it was an absolutely fantastic performance. Once again, he did everything that I said he would need to do. As for Gilberto Ramirez, I think that this was just a case of a fighter being better than him. I don't really know if there's really much that he could do to adjust against Dmitry Bivol. I just think Dmitry Bivol has the type of style to really beat someone like a Gilberto Ramirez, as well as an Artubitabev. If you want to mainly beat a Gilberto Ramirez, the perfect type of style to really beat him is someone like a Dmitry Bivol, someone that can move in and out very quick with his feet, and someone on the know that utilizes and uses his jab and his right hand to the best of his degree. And on top of that, he is willing to push you back overall, to make you, make sure that you respect his punches very early on. And he has very decent power. So Dmitry Bivol is pretty much the perfect type of person to beat someone like a Gilberto Ramirez. Because even though Ramirez, in my opinion, is a very good fighter, he is a little bit more limited on the back foot than what he would be the front foot. And his head does not move as much as what it probably should, especially when he is backed up. And that's exactly what Dmitry Bivol was able to take advantage of. Gilberto Ramirez was always a little bit of a force in there, in my opinion, just because of his size. But the fight really, in my opinion, was not that competitive. Dmitry Bivol was able to outspeed him. He was able to outwork him. He was able to outmaneuver him. And overall, he was just able to completely outbox him. He taught him a boxing lesson. It just is what it is. So I have to give Dmitry Bivol a lot of credit. And there is no debate about it now. I mean, to be honest with you, I really don't think there's a debate about it after he beat Canelo Alvarez in that fight in very dominant fashion. Even though Canelo, in my opinion, I don't think that his stamina was the best. But either way, now after beating Canelo Alvarez, as well as Joe Smith Jr. and once upon a time, Jean Pascal, and now Gilberto Ramirez, 2 fights that either A, he was not favored in, or that were looked at as 50-50 fights, and he was able to win both of those fights, either anywhere from 8 rounds to 4 or 10 rounds to 2. There's no debate about it. Dmitry Bivol is not only one of the top 10 pound-for-pound fighters in the world, undoubtedly, in my opinion, he also is the fighter of the year. And a lot of people may disagree with that. But when you talk about getting the victory over the former undisputed number one pound for pound fighter in that of Canelo Alvarez when it comes down to it. And then overall, you ended up beating Gilberto Ramirez, who is a very highly touted prospect and looked at as an A grade fighter. And in my opinion, you beat him at least 9 rounds to three. I mean, he has to be the fighter of the year. I really don't even see a debatable conversation. I don't know one other fighter this year that, in my opinion, impressed to that degree, at least when you talk about a series of fights. Now, some people may debate Shakur Stevenson, but I would not debate even the Oscar Valdez win is as good as either of the wins, at least debatably, that Dmitry Bivol has when it comes down with. So, Oscar Valdez, of course, was touted as a top 20 pound for pound fighter. So let me not say that. But with the combination of also beating Canelo, he has to be the fighter of the year. No doubt about it. But once again, very great performance by Mr. Dmitry Bivol. He did everything that I said that he would need to do. As for Gilberto Ramirez, hopefully he's able to later on continue, his career, and we'll see where he really goes from here. But like I said, this is also going to be a fight to see truly how good both men were. And Gilberto Ramirez is no offense against him, but he majorly failed the test. It is what it is. And I always said this about Gilberto Ramirez, although he is very decently talented, we didn't truly know how good he actually was because this man pretty much had a career. Yes, he's 44-0, but this is a big part of the reason why you can't always take a look and say, oh, wow, that guy has 40-something fights on his record. This guy must be better than someone that has 20-some fights on his record. And this is a great example of this because Dmitry Bivol, he doesn't even have 25 fights on his record. But when you take a look at the way that he was able to dominate Canelo Alvarez and Gilberto Ramirez, now in Canelo, it was a little bit more, I think, of the skill combined with the size. But for Gilberto Ramirez, Zerda was decently bigger than Dmitry Bivol. At least it looked like a weight class bigger than Dmitry Bivol. And Bivol was able to dominate him because I don't think that Gilberto Ramirez has ever been in the ring with someone like Dmitry Bivol. Not even close, at least when you talk about a professional setting. So it is what it is. So hopefully Gilberto Ramirez is able to go back to the drawing board. In my opinion, he's going to have to work on his head movement. He's going to have to work on his angles. He's going to have to work on his foot speed when it comes down to it, and a little bit of his head movement, and also adjusting against fighters that are more than likely going to try to push him back. Because if you push Gilberto Ramirez back, he is a little bit more limited. Not saying that he's, not going to be able to fight back at all. But against a fighter like Dmitry Bivol, who had the hand speed and overall the foot speed and the type of power that he has and the type of boxing IQ, he was overall exposed for some of the few faults that he was able to have. And Dmitry Bivol did a very good job of exposing certain, faults of Mr. Zerda Ramirez's. But, it is what it is. But anyways, just continuing onwards, because, of course, a lot of people are also going to want to talk about the possibility of there being a Canelo Alvarez versus Dmitry Bivol rematch, excuse me, or what maybe Dmitry Bivol could do next. And Dmitry Bivol stated himself that he would want to fight for a title next, which means that more than likely he wants to face that of Artur Beterbiev. And I, of course, would love to see that fight. After this performance, to be quite honest with you, I really don't know who to favor within that fight. At first, I would favor Artur Beterbiev just because he's looked so dominant. But if there is a style to beat Artur Beterbiev, in my opinion, it's probably going to be Dmitry Bivol. Because I don't know if there's actually a fighter that can really 100% push him back when it comes down to it, that overall is not going to get knocked out. Artur Beterbiev has absolute bone-crushing power. I mean, it really is phenomenal. But when it comes down to it, Dmitry Bivol, I would like to see the Canelo Alvarez rematch. If you were going to ask me overall, well, do you think that Canelo has a decent chance of defeating Dmitry Bivol in the rematch? It depends. If the fight ends up happening at 168, I think that is going to be a little bit more closely, a little bit more of a close matchup than what it would be at 175. But I would like overall for the rematch once again to happen at 175. But if it ends up happening at 168, it's still a decent fight as well. But I don't think that it's really has as much, greatness on the fight if it happens at 168. Now, some people may disagree, but I think that Dmitry Bivol is a natural light heavyweight. And I think that if Canelo wants to reinstate himself as the number one pound for pound fighter, I think that he has to try to beat him at 175. I just think that he has to completely be in much better shape, don't gain as much weight for this fight. But some people may disagree. If you're going to ask me personally, do I think that Canelo Alvarez beats Dmitry Bivol at 175, even making certain adjustments? No, I don't. And it's not that Canelo was not a great fighter. In my opinion, Canelo is an all-time great fighter. But when you talk about the type of style that Dmitry Bivol has, and on top of that, the fact that he's at least 2 weight classes bigger than that of a Canelo Alvarez, I just don't know if I would favor Canelo Alvarez to beat Dmitry Bivol in a rematch. But if there is any fighter that could do it anywhere from 160 to 168, it would be someone like a Canelo Alvarez or even 175. There's very few fighters that I would pick to beat Dmitry Bivol. Demetrius Andre, Jamal Charlo, they would not be able to do it. I think that their size combined with their skill set, they would not be able to beat someone like a Dmitry Bivol. When you talk about someone like a Caleb Plant or a David Benavidez, I don't think that they would really be able to beat Dmitry Bivol. I just think all in all that they would not be able to do it. I don't think that either of them have the athleticism of Dmitry Bivol nor the boxing skill. And on top of that, when it comes down to it, even if you talk about most light heavyweights, the only light heavyweight that I maybe would favor over Dmitry Bivol would be an Artur. There's not many people out there that are going to defeat that of a Dmitry Bivol. He's just too athletic when it comes down to it, and on top of that, he's way too talented. But if Canelo is somehow able to go back up to light heavyweight, and if he's able to beat Dmitry Bivol, which in my opinion would be the best thing for Canelo Alvarez's career, in my opinion, but I could also see the move to 168. I could see why, maybe Canelo would want to do that, or why certain people maybe would want to do that. And then if you're able to beat him at 168, maybe beat him at 175, I would understand. But in my opinion, you're going to get more credit if you overall beat him at 175 and don't try to take him down to 168. But, we'll see overall what ends up happening with that. And if Dimitri is able to beat Canelo at 168, of course, he'll be able to get all the titles at 168 pounds. So that also would be a great move for Dmitry Bivol if he can make the weight. But I'm not 100% sure if he can. I've heard from certain people that he's a little bit smaller for some of the light heavyweights. Maybe that is, true, but I don't know. He looks like a natural light heavyweight to me. So we'll see overall what ends up happening for that fight. It will be very particularly interesting. What I'll say is this. If Canelo is actually able to go up to 175 and beat Dmitry Bivol, he'll hands down be within my top 20 fighters of all time. No question. He'll have to be right there with Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker, Roberto Duran. He'll have to be right there with Marvin Hagler. He'll have to be right there overall with a lot of the other fighters that I have within my top 20, pound for pound of all time. Lennox Lewis, those guys, maybe Willie Pep if I were going to bring him up. He would have to be right there with all those fighters. And the reason why is because if Canelo was actually able to come back in a rematch against Dmitry Bivol at 175 and beat someone that clearly could be argued right now as a top 5 pound per pound fighter when it comes down to it, and then he is actually able to beat him in a match overall to where the first time around he got thoroughly dominated, that would make him, very, 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 that would be one of the greatest performances of his career, no doubt about it. So it's going to be very interesting. If he does do it at 168, it still would be a very decent win in my opinion, but it just wouldn't have the pizzazz on it as what a 175-pound win would have. But we'll see overall what Mr. Canelo Alvarez does next. I believe that he wants the Dmitry Bivol rematch, but we'll see overall what ends up happening there. The question also will be is, does Dmitry Bivol want the Canelo rematch? Because apparently to him, it does not really interest him that much. So it's going to be very interesting. But anyways, that's really about it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Congratulations to Mr. Dmitry Bivol. And we'll also see where both gentlemen go from here. But anyways, that's really about it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later.